AITA for exposing my wife after she called me controlling while I funded her secret relationship? I'm Hubert, 44, and by the night my wife tried to put our marriage on trial in front of everyone we cared about, I had already spent months trying not to become the angry husband she kept describing. Natalie and I had been married for 14 years. We had the kind of marriage people called stable, which can sound boring unless you're inside it, and grateful for the quiet. We had Sunday morning coffee. We had a junk drawer with spare batteries, old keys, and takeout menus neither of us ever threw away. We had the same argument every year about whether the thermostat should be set at 70 or 72. I checked the shared checking account every Sunday after breakfast because mortgage autopay, insurance, groceries, subscriptions, and household expenses had a way of sneaking up if nobody paid attention. For most of our marriage, Natalie called that dependable. Then one day, dependable became boring. Boring became rigid. Rigid became controlling. The first time she used that word, I actually laughed because I thought she was being dramatic. I had asked about a $600 transfer out of our shared checking account with the note, "Help." It didn't match any bill I knew about, and it had posted on a Thursday afternoon while I was making dinner. Natalie was standing by the sink, scrolling on her phone, still in the sweater she wore when she wanted to look casual but put together. She didn't look up when I asked. "What transfer?" she said. "The one for $600, I said. "From the joint account." Her thumb stopped moving. That was the first thing I noticed. Not her face. Her thumb. "It was personal," she said. I waited, because after 14 years, personal wasn't usually where we stopped. We had seen each other through stomach bugs, car repairs, family funerals, medical scares, credit card mistakes, and one awful year where everything in the house seemed to break at once. "Okay," I said carefully. "Personal how?" She set her phone face down on the counter. "You don't want a wife," she said. "You want a schedule you can manage." I blinked at her. "Natalie, I'm asking where $600 went. That's not the same thing." "It is to me." That was how it started. Not with screaming. Not with slammed doors. With a sentence that made me feel like I had walked into the middle of a conversation she had been having without me. After that, everything had a new meaning. If I asked why she was coming home later than usual, I was insecure. If I asked why she had blocked off an entire Saturday on our shared calendar as reset day, but wouldn't say where she had been, I was suffocating her. If I asked if she still wanted to go to counseling, I was only interested in having a professional tell her she was wrong. The strangest part was that I did try. I'm not saying I was a perfect husband. I could be too practical when she wanted emotion. I would try to solve a problem before I understood why she was upset. I used to think remembering oil changes and insurance renewals was a love language. Natalie used to think it was, too. Or maybe she just used to appreciate it because she still loved me. When things started getting tense, I suggested counseling. She said yes at first, then canceled the first appointment because she needed emotional space. The second time, she said she forgot. The third time, she showed up 20 minutes late, sat with her arms crossed, and told the counselor I had weaponized maturity. On the drive home, I kept my hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel because I didn't trust myself to gesture. "I'm not asking you to pretend we're fine," I said. "I'm asking you to sit in a room with me and try." She looked out the passenger window. "It's too late to become the husband I needed," she said. That one hurt more than I let her see. After that, Natalie started talking in phrases that sounded polished. "I'm choosing myself. I need emotional safety. I have spent years shrinking myself. I deserve to be seen." None of those things are bad on their own. People should feel safe. People should be seen. People shouldn't disappear inside a marriage. But Natalie used those words like doors she could close in my face. If I asked a direct question, she answered with a slogan. If I asked for a conversation, she told me conversation wasn't safe with me. If I said, "I feel like you're rewriting our marriage," she said, "You're proving my point right now." I started to feel like every sentence I spoke was being collected as evidence. Then other people began treating me differently. At a family barbecue, Devin barely looked me in the eye. Devin had been a mutual friend for years, the kind of guy who brought too much ice and stayed late to help stack chairs. That day, he gave me a half nod, then drifted toward Natalie's side of the patio. Natalie's mother hugged me with one arm. One arm from that woman was basically a court ruling. My sister Elise noticed before I said anything. She was standing with me near the cooler, pretending to read the label on a bottle of lemonade. "Hubert," she said quietly, I need to ask you something ugly. I already knew I wasn't going to like it. What? Is any of what she's saying true? I looked at her. What is she saying? Elisa's face tightened. That you control the money. That you track where she goes. That she can't breathe without you questioning it. I stared across the yard. Natalie was laughing with Devin and two of her cousins. Her laugh sounded normal. That almost made it worse. If asking about our mortgage account is controlling, I said, then apparently yes. Elise didn't smile. She's been texting people, Hubert. Long messages. Not just venting. Framing things. I felt heat rise behind my ears. What did you say? I told her I wasn't going to judge my brother based on a group chat monologue, Elise said. But not everyone is me. That night, I lay awake while Natalie slept facing away from me. Her phone was under her pillow. That was new. She used to leave it charging on the nightstand or forget it in the kitchen. Now, if I walked into a room, she tilted the screen away like the phone was modest. I didn't go through it. I want that part clear. I didn't sneak passwords, install anything, follow her, or read anything I had no access to. Part of me wanted to. I'd be lying if I said the thought never crossed my mind. But another part of me, the part Marcus later called the only useful part of your brain right now, knew that if Natalie was already painting me as controlling, I couldn't hand her a brush. Marcus was my best friend, and he had known me long enough to hear what I wasn't saying. When I told him about Elisa's warning, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed a hand over his face. She's building a runway, he said. For what? To take off and tell everyone you pushed her. I hated how quickly that made sense. A week later, the money started looking stranger. At first, it was little things. A $120 Venmo transfer labeled reimburse. A $300 Zelle payment labeled deposit. A $90 charge at a restaurant Natalie said she had never been to. A charge from a hotel chain that posted, disappeared, then reappeared under a slightly different merchant name. One transfer could be a mistake. 5 transfers with vague labels were a message I didn't want to read. When I asked Natalie about the Zelle payment, she was sitting at the kitchen island eating yogurt straight out of the container. It's not healthy that you monitor every dollar, she said. I monitor the joint account because it pays our bills. You always make money more important than feelings. I'm not choosing between money and feelings, I said. I'm asking about money that belongs to both of us. She laughed, but it came out sharp. There it is. Belongs. Then she walked away and left the yogurt on the counter. The hotel receipt came 2 days later. We used one email account for household records. Receipts, warranties, travel confirmations, insurance documents, anything we both might need. That morning, while I was looking for a receipt for a dishwasher repair, I found a hotel confirmation from 3 weeks earlier. One night. King room. Paid with a card linked to our shared account. The date matched a weekend Natalie had called a self-care weekend at a friend's place. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. My first instinct was to call her. My second was to drive somewhere and scream. My third, the one that won, was to print it. Apparently, that boring habit was about to save me. I put the receipt in a folder in the bottom drawer of my desk. Then I called Marcus. He answered with, "You alive?" "No," I said, "but I'm walking around." I told him what I had found. There was a long silence. "Do not text her," he said. I didn't say I was going to. You were breathing like a man about to text. I want to know who he is. You will, Marcus said, but not by turning her lie into your mugshot. I'm not going to hit anybody. I know. I'm saying don't give her a screenshot of your pain. Give your lawyer a timeline. The word lawyer landed like a plate dropped on tile. I'm not there yet. You are exactly there, Marcus said. You can still love her and protect yourself. Those are not opposites. I hated him for being right. For the next couple of weeks, I became very quiet. Natalie seemed to think that meant I was defeated. She moved through the house like someone rehearsing independence. She bought new clothes and called them a reclaiming. She changed the way she wore her hair and waited for me to comment. I didn't. She started taking calls outside. When I walked into the living room, she would end them with a soft, "I'll call you back," and then look at me like I had interrupted a therapy session. I documented everything I could document from ordinary shared access. Bank alerts came to my phone because I was the one who had set them up years earlier after a fraud scare. The family laptop sat on the kitchen counter because both of us used it for bills. The household email was still logged in because it had always been logged in. Our shared calendar showed private appointment, reset day, and dinner with M on nights that now matched charges I couldn't explain. The big break came on a Tuesday night. Natalie was in the shower. I was at the kitchen counter paying the electric bill on the family laptop. A bank alert popped up in the corner of the screen. Another Zelle transfer. This one was $1,400, with the note, last part. Last part of what? My hands went cold. I opened the account, and from there the trail wasn't hard to follow. There were transfers to an account I didn't recognize, but the memo lines had the same rhythm. Help. Deposit. For place. Reimburse. Last part. While I was saving the statements, a cloud backup notification popped up. It was one of those automatic sync folders we had set up years before when Natalie lost a phone and cried over missing photos from a family trip. Screenshots had been backing up there from old devices, mixed in with recipes, photos of receipts, and random images we had never organized. I didn't find what I found because I was a genius. I found it because Natalie had gotten careless in a system we both used. There were screenshots of text conversations. His name was Carter. Carter, apparently, was the man who understood her emotional landscape. He was also the man whose dinner had been paid for with our joint account, whose hotel room lined up with her girls' night, and whose name appeared in a message about a furnished apartment deposit. I read enough to understand, then forced myself to stop and save what mattered. No intimate pictures. Nothing like that. I didn't want them, and I didn't need them. What mattered were the receipts, the transfers, and the words. One message from Natalie said, "He cares too much about looking decent. He won't fight me if everyone thinks he neglected me." Another said, "If he feels guilty enough, he'll keep paying while we get settled." That was the sentence that changed everything. Until then, some broken part of me had still been asking how to save my marriage. After that, I started asking how to save myself. The affair hurt. Of course it did. 14 years don't detach cleanly because one person acts like they never mattered. But the planning was something else. Natalie wasn't just leaving. She was arranging for me to pay for her exit while carrying the blame. She wanted the house, the sympathy, the money, and the moral high ground. She wanted me to be too ashamed to defend myself. The next morning, I met with a lawyer. I didn't know what to expect. I think some part of me expected a dramatic speech about justice. Instead, she asked for dates, documents, account numbers, and whether either of us had already moved out. When I told her no, she looked directly at me. "Do not leave the home just because she wants the optics," she said. That word again. Optics. "She's telling people I abused her financially," I said, "or controlled her, or something close enough." "Then we keep the facts clean," the lawyer said. "No threats. No public rants. No social media. Preserve the records. Communicate in writing when you can. Do not block access to required household funds, but stop unnecessary joint spending where you are legally able. And stop trying to win emotional arguments." I almost laughed. "That obvious? Pain makes people want a confession," she said. "You don't need revenge. You need records." I left with a list and a headache. Marcus came over that night and sat at my kitchen table while I printed statements. He had brought takeout because he said people going through betrayal either forget to eat or eat like raccoons. We ate noodles from cartons while the printer hummed in the corner. He looked at the stack of papers, then at me. "You okay?" "No." "Good." That was the only honest answer. I slid one of the screenshots across the table. He read it, and his face changed. "Hubert." "I know. She planned to make you fund it." "I know." He pushed the paper back like it smelled bad. "Evidence first," he said. "Emotion later." I'm tired of being calm. Calm is not the same as weak. I feel weak. "You're not weak," Marcus said. "You're angry, and you're still thinking. That is a dangerous combination if you use it right." Elise came by 2 days later. She didn't ask to see everything. She said she would if I wanted, but she didn't need proof to believe me. We sat in the living room with the TV off. Natalie was out at another private appointment. The house felt staged without her in it, like all the furniture had been placed for people who weren't coming back. Elise twisted a tissue in her hands. "I'm scared you'll forgive her because you miss who she used to be," she said. That hit harder than I expected. "I do miss who she used to be," I said. "I know. I keep thinking maybe that person is still in there somewhere." Elise's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "You can miss her and still not let her rob you." I looked down at the coffee table, at the little scratch Natalie made years ago when she dropped a mug and cried because she thought I would be mad. I had laughed then and told her furniture was supposed to survive people living around it. I'm learning those can be true at the same time, I said. Good, Elise said. Because her tears are not allowed to become another bill you pay. The anniversary dinner was Natalie's idea. That should have warned me more than it did. We hadn't been acting like a couple who celebrated anniversaries. We had been two people sharing rooms and avoiding landmines. Then, out of nowhere, she suggested dinner with the people who have supported our marriage. Her exact words. A private table. Family. A few close friends. Nothing huge, she said. Just meaningful. I almost said no. Then I remembered the group texts, the cold barbecue, the way she had been preparing everyone for a version of me I didn't recognize. So I said yes. Not because I wanted to save the dinner. Because I suspected she wanted witnesses. I brought the envelope in the inside pocket of my jacket. It wasn't thick enough to look dramatic, but it was heavy enough that I felt it every time I moved. Inside were clean copies of the hotel receipt, bank transfers, apartment deposit, counseling confirmations, messages where I asked her to attend, messages where she refused, and the screenshots about making me pay. No intimate material. No extra cruelty. Just enough truth to stop the lie from walking out of that room wearing my face. Natalie arrived polished and calm. Her makeup was soft, her dress was simple, and she wore the earrings I had given her on our 10th anniversary. That felt intentional, too. Carter was there. I hadn't been told Carter would be there. Natalie introduced him as a friend who's been there for me during a hard season. He stood when I arrived and held out his hand like we were at a networking breakfast. Hubert, he said, I've heard a lot about you. I looked at his hand, then at his face. I'm sure you have. I didn't shake it. A chair scraped somewhere behind me. Devin looked at his menu like the appetizers required moral courage. Natalie's mother pressed her lips together. Elise, who had come because I asked her to, stared at Carter with the kind of expression that made me glad she was on my side. Dinner started wrong and stayed wrong. People made small talk in that stiff way adults do when everyone knows there's a loaded gun under the table, but nobody knows who brought it. Natalie touched her wine glass 3 times before she spoke. I noticed because she always did that before giving a toast. Once, I found it charming. That night, it made my stomach tighten. She stood. I know this is not a normal anniversary dinner, she began. The room went quiet. I folded my napkin once and set it beside my plate. Natalie looked around the table, making eye contact with everyone except me. I spent a long time thinking love meant staying quiet, she said. I spent years trying to be the wife Hubert wanted. Organized. Agreeable. Easy. But somewhere in that, I disappeared. Her mother's eyes watered almost immediately. Devin leaned back and looked at me with disappointment already loaded. Natalie continued, her voice steady. I am done apologizing for wanting to feel alive. I am done being made to feel guilty for needing freedom. I found people who reminded me I'm not invisible. I found someone who listens without making me feel like a problem to solve. Carter lowered his eyes in a performance of humility so bad it almost impressed me. Natalie finally looked at me. I know this is painful, Hubert, but I need emotional safety. I need a real partner. And I need to stop being controlled by someone who thinks paying bills is the same as love. There it was. The sentence everyone had been prepared for. My water glass had condensation running down the side. I watched one drop slide onto the tablecloth. The old me would have defended every word. I would have explained the counseling appointments, the bank account, the weekends, the years of trying. I would have begged people to understand. The new me waited for the opening. I asked, how long have you been preparing this? Natalie's face flickered, just for a second. Then she lifted her chin. Long enough to know I deserved better. Someone at the table shifted. Elise's hand tightened around her fork. Natalie took a breath and went on. I don't want this to become ugly. I want honesty. For once, I want honesty. I reached into my jacket and took out the envelope. The paper edge slid against the tablecloth with a soft, dry sound. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every eye in the room followed it. Good, I said. Then let's start with yours. Natalie stared at the envelope. What is that? The part you left out. Carter sat up straighter. I don't think this is appropriate. I looked at him. You were invited to my anniversary dinner as my wife's emotional support affair partner. We passed appropriate about 10 minutes ago. Nobody laughed. I was glad. I hadn't said it to be funny. Natalie's voice sharpened. You're proving my point right now. No, I said. I'm answering the point you made in front of witnesses. Her mother said, "Hubert, maybe this should be private." I turned to her, and I kept my voice as calm as I could. I wanted private. I asked for private for months. Counseling was private. Budget conversations were private. Asking why my wife disappeared for weekends was private. Natalie chose this room. That landed. Not completely, but enough. I opened the envelope. My hands were steady. That surprised me. "I'm not going to read everything," I said. "I'm not here to punish anyone with extra details. But I am going to correct the record." Natalie made a small sound, half scoff and half panic. I placed the first sheet on the table. Counseling appointment confirmation. Canceled by Natalie. Second sheet. Another counseling appointment. She didn't show. Third. My message asking her to choose a different counselor if she didn't like that one. Her reply was, "Stop trying to manage my healing." Devin looked at Natalie. She wouldn't look back. I placed the bank statements next. "These are transfers from our shared checking account, the account that pays the mortgage and household bills. The notes say help, deposit, for place, and reimburse." Natalie reached for her wine glass, missed the stem, and set her hand flat on the table instead. "You are humiliating me," she said. "No," I said. "You humiliated me with a lie. I'm correcting the record." Carter stood halfway, then sat down again. "This is between you and your wife," he said. I took out the apartment deposit receipt and placed it beside the transfers. "You made it yours when you helped spend marital money." His face changed. "I didn't know that money came from a joint account." Natalie snapped, "Carter." That one word told the room a lot. I didn't look away from him. "She told you we had already agreed to separate, didn't she?" Carter's mouth opened, then closed. I nodded once. We had not. Natalie's eyes were wet now, but the tears seemed angry more than sad. "I was trying to survive emotionally," she said. "You were planning an apartment," I said. "Those are different things." I placed the hotel receipt down last before the screenshots. A tiny sound came from Natalie's mother. I didn't look at her. "The date on that receipt," I said, "is the weekend Natalie said she was staying with a friend for self-care. Paid from our shared account." Natalie whispered, "Stop." "I was ready to let you go quietly," I said. "I was not ready to keep paying for your new life while you told everyone I trapped you in the old one." Then I placed the screenshot on top. I had highlighted only 2 messages. "He cares too much about looking decent. He won't fight me if everyone thinks he neglected me. If he feels guilty enough, he'll keep paying while we get settled." The room went completely still. Not quiet. Still. The kind of still where people stop pretending they aren't involved. Devin picked up the screenshot first. His eyebrows pulled together as he read it. Then he looked at Natalie. "Did you really transfer money before you told him?" Natalie wiped under one eye. "That's not what this is about." Devin's voice changed. Less certain. Less performative. "It's a pretty simple question." She looked at Carter, then at her mother, then at me. "It became what this is about," I said, "when you used my name to hide it." Carter pushed his chair back. This time he stood all the way. "Natalie," he said slowly, "you told me you two had already separated financially." Natalie's face went pale under her makeup. "I told you it was complicated." "No," Carter said. "You told me he agreed to keep paying the house expenses while you figured things out." I gave a short laugh. It came out without humor. "That was generous of me. I wish someone had told me." Natalie turned on him then. "Don't do this right now." Carter looked around the table and seemed to realize that the role he had walked in wearing no longer fit him. He wasn't the rescuer. He wasn't the better man. He was a man at someone else's anniversary dinner, attached to receipts. "I didn't know," he said, quieter. I believed him partly. Not enough to respect him, but enough to understand that Natalie had given him a cleaner story, too. Natalie sat down hard. Her mother reached toward her, then stopped. That hurt Natalie more than anything I had said. I saw it cross her face. For the first time that night, she looked scared. "Hubert," she said, and her voice softened into something familiar. "You didn't have to do it like this." I gathered the papers back into a neat stack. "You wanted witnesses," I said. "Now we have witnesses." The server appeared at the worst possible moment with a plate of food nobody remembered ordering. He froze, looked at the table, then backed away like he had walked into a hostage situation. Nobody stopped him. I put the papers back in the envelope. "From now on," I said, "everything goes through writing or my lawyer. I am not leaving the house to help you tell people I abandoned you. I am not funding anything beyond what is required." And I am not having private emotional conversations after public lies. Natalie's mouth trembled. You loved me, she said. That almost broke me. Because I had. I did. Not the woman sitting there weaponizing tears because the receipts were bad, but the woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during boring movies. The woman who once cried over a scratched coffee table. The woman who used to call me from the grocery store because she forgot whether we needed eggs, then bought them anyway because eggs are never a mistake. I loved that woman. But love had become a place Natalie expected me to stand while she took aim. I loved you, I said. That was never permission to use me. I left with Elise. My legs felt strange walking out, like the floor had moved a few inches lower than I expected. In the parking lot, Elise grabbed my arm and pulled me into a hug so fast I almost dropped the envelope. I didn't cry in the restaurant. I cried in the car. Not loud, not dramatically, just the kind of crying where your body finally realizes it has been holding a door shut for too long. Elise sat in the driver's seat because she had taken my keys without asking. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. I exposed my wife at dinner. She tried to execute you socially at your own anniversary dinner. That sounds insane when you say it. It was insane when she did it. My phone buzzed before we even left the parking lot. Then again. I didn't check until we were back at my house. The family group chat was silent. That silence felt different from the old silence. Before, it had felt like judgment. Now it felt like people were staring at a mess they had helped carry inside. Private messages came first. Devin wrote, Hubert, I owe you an apology. I didn't know the whole story. Then, a minute later, I should have asked you before assuming. One of Natalie's cousins wrote, I'm sorry for what I said at the barbecue. Another message said, Natalie told us a very different version. Nobody sent confetti. Nobody should have. But the silence stopped feeling like a verdict against me. Natalie didn't come home that night. She sent one text at 1:17 a.m. I cannot believe you made me look evil in front of my mother. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. You did that with your choices. I didn't send anything else. The next week wasn't cinematic. There was no dramatic final showdown, with music swelling in the background. There were forms, statements, lawyer emails, account reviews, awkward messages, and the dull practical grief of separating a life. My lawyer moved quickly. We documented the transfers. We flagged the apartment deposit. We established written communication. We made sure household bills were covered while stopping the unnecessary bleeding from accounts Natalie had treated like a farewell gift basket. The most satisfying part wasn't watching Natalie cry. It was watching the numbers finally stop bleeding. When Natalie realized she couldn't keep using shared money freely, her tone changed. At first, she was furious. You're financially punishing me, she wrote. My lawyer responded. Then she became wounded. I hope one day you understand the harm you caused by making this adversarial. My lawyer responded. Then she tried nostalgia. Do you remember our first apartment? We used to eat cereal for dinner and laugh about being broke. I miss those people. That one I answered myself, in writing. I remember them. They wouldn't recognize what you did. She didn't respond for 2 days. Carter pulled back sooner than I expected. I heard it from Natalie before I heard it from anyone else, because she called me crying from a number I didn't recognize after I stopped answering unexpected calls from her. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then something in me wanted to hear whether she was finally ready to tell the truth. She wasn't. Carter doesn't know what he wants now, she said. I stood in the kitchen, looking at the empty space where her favorite mug used to hang. That sounds like something you should discuss with Carter. There was a pause. After 14 years, that's all you have to say? I closed my eyes. What do you want from me, Natalie? I want you to admit you didn't have to make me look like some monster. I didn't expose you for leaving, I said. I exposed you for lying, taking money, and trying to make me pay for the story you invented. She started crying harder. You don't understand. I felt trapped. You weren't trapped. You were married. You could have asked for a divorce. You could have told the truth. You could have left without turning me into the villain so you could feel clean. You're so cold now. No, I said. I'm just not available for this anymore. Hubert. There it was again. My name in the voice she used when she wanted the old door to open. I didn't open it. Everything from now on goes through writing or my lawyer. I ended the call before she could answer. For a long time afterward, I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling both cruel and free. That was the strange part. Boundaries didn't feel noble. They felt like holding a heavy object with both hands and refusing to drop it even though your arms hurt. Natalie's mother called me a few days later. I answered because, despite everything, she had been part of my life for 14 years. She sounded older. "I'm not calling to interfere," she said. "Okay. I believe my daughter. I understand. I shouldn't have believed her without asking you." I didn't know what to say, so I let her continue. "She told me you made her feel small. She told me you watched every dollar to punish her. She didn't tell me about Carter. She didn't tell me about the apartment. She didn't tell me what she wrote." Her voice broke on the last sentence. "I'm sorry, Hubert. That apology didn't fix anything, but it landed somewhere in me that needed it." "Thank you," I said. "She went too far," she whispered. And I told her that. I believed her. The divorce process continued. It wasn't clean, but it was cleaner than it could have been if I had kept quiet. The records mattered. The timeline mattered. The fact that I hadn't threatened, stalked, hacked, posted online, or exploded in public mattered. Natalie still tried to soften the story wherever she could. I heard from people that she was saying things like, "We both made mistakes, and the marriage had been over emotionally for a long time." I didn't chase every version down. I had already corrected the one that mattered. Carter, from what little I heard, didn't move into the furnished apartment. The deposit became one more ugly line in a legal document. Whether he left because he felt lied to, because money got complicated, or because rescuing Natalie stopped being flattering, I don't know. I stopped caring faster than I thought I would. The house became quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet. At first, every room accused me. Her missing coat from the entryway. The bathroom drawer with half the space empty. The side of the bed where she used to sleep. The calendar that no longer had vague reset days, but also no shared plans. Then slowly, the quiet stopped being punishment. I changed the coffee brand because Natalie had picked the old one and I never actually liked it. I replaced the scratched-up welcome mat. I moved the spare batteries from the junk drawer into a small organizer because it annoyed me that I could never find the right size. That made me laugh for the first time in weeks, because somewhere out there Natalie would have called that controlling. Maybe it was. Maybe I like order because life can turn on you even when you keep receipts. But I no longer apologize for being the person who notices when money disappears, when stories change, when love starts asking for silence as proof. I don't feel victorious in the way people imagine revenge feels. Divorce still hurt. 14 years still mattered. There were nights when I missed her so badly I had to remind myself what she had actually done. There were mornings when I poured 2 cups of coffee by habit and hated myself for it. But I didn't beg. I didn't fund the apartment. I didn't leave the house so she could pose as abandoned. I didn't let her turn my patience into evidence against me. The envelope didn't save my marriage. It was never going to. It saved the part of me that still thought being decent meant standing there quietly while someone lied about me. Natalie thought I would beg because I loved her. She forgot love is not the same thing as surrender. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.